Welcome to the Eagle Valley Model Railroad. This video is the second video of this series where we're building on our mountain scene. What we're doing here, we're continuing to add extra layers of our dryer sheet and plaster of Paris mixture. After the first layer was put down, I noticed once it dried that we had some thinning areas where the plaster wasn't on the dryer sheet too well, or it was just a single sheet. So what we're doing is going around the whole mountain. We're adding a second layer to give us a good foundation for when we put on our scenery elements later on. Our rock molds, our grasses, and our dirt, and give us a good anchor point for when we get to the point of putting trees. I know a few of you guys asked about the dryer sheet, and I don't know, it was a DIY video I saw a while back, and that's what the guy used, and decided we would give it a shot. It kept me from having to go find newspaper or borrow newspapers from folks and go that route. And I talked my wife into saving her dryer sheets for me. And I think it turned out pretty good. It actually holds the plaster pretty well. It has a rough shape. If you want to rub it and smooth it out, you can. But if you just put it up there and put minimal effort into messing with it, it stays a pretty rough texture, which is kind of what I was going for here. And plus, when you get to a point where you need to sand some of it down, it actually smells pretty good. We're also in this second layer taking the opportunity to use the last bit of our plaster of Paris and smooth out any of our seams. This area right here was the worst of all of showing those seams. It was a little bit tough to do this step on the first layer just because there really wasn't anything to press against to eliminate those seams. But since we've got this first layer dried and set pretty well, it gives us a good surface to work off of, and we can really blend some of this stuff together. We could have went another layer after this, but I feel like it was sufficient to hold what we wanted to hold and to achieve the look that we wanted. This was going to be just enough for us this time. Haven't even done any blending in that area right there, and just, I guess because it was the second layer of it, I mean, even that looks better than what it did a while ago. We're definitely going back and smoothing out those spots and getting it looking exactly like we want it. It's a little bit of a messy job. Just make sure that your area is covered up, that you really don't want to have to redo, because once this stuff gets in it and dries, it's pretty much a done deal with it. Yeah, the only way to get it up is to scrape it up, and whatever it touched is going to come up with it. So unless you just want to redo the area, don't worry about covering it up. But I do suggest putting some paper down, because as careful as you want to be, it's going to make some bit of a mess. Really looking forward to running some trains through this area. It's what we call our peekaboo spot, where it actually comes out of the mountain on the left-hand side and can go back in the mountain on the right-hand side. And of course, vice versa. It can go the other direction as well. But it's going to be pretty neat, I think, to have this little area. Still have to figure out what I'm going to do with the bridge. Not real sure what I want to do there. It's not a very long gap, but it's definitely a noticeable gap. So, of course, there needs to be support under there, and just trying to figure out what we're going to do there. Right here, we're going to clean up the back side of our mountain, and we're going to put us up a masonite board. Again, that masonite board is smooth on one side and it's rough on the other. And our thought is the smooth side, we're actually going to put a background of a rail yard. And the idea is to make our auxiliary yard here, that's 3 sets of track, and give it a visual effect to where it looks like it goes into the back side of the mountain here, and it looks like a whole rail yard. So I'm going to go online and do some research and see if we can find us a good looking rail yard that is the perspective that I want to give us the effect of this rail yard being a lot bigger than what it is. So that's just a dry fit, just to see how it was going to look. And once I did this, it looked square. It looked boxy to me, which of course it does because it is. So we're going to put us a little contour on this when we get ready to set it. Just trying to make sure we don't get anything in the way of the rail cars. Not much clearance, but this is the longest car we have on the Eagle Valley. If we do go any longer, there is a little bit of clearance here, a little bit of room. So I think we'll be all right. Was going to use my foam adhesive. I do like the way that stuff works, and it works on multiple surfaces. I'm just used to working with it and getting it smoothed out, and just the initial tackiness of it's what I like. To hold stuff just as much as it does when it's dry, it glues it. So I wanted to use it. Didn't realize I didn't have any, but you use what you got on hand. This is a pretty expensive way to do this with this wood glue, but whatever, it's what I had, and I really didn't care to go anywhere that night. So use what you got. I was close to the end of the bottle anyway, so I needed to get me a new bottle. So we wound up just finishing this one off. And it actually held and did very well, being cardboard on one side, and then that masonite paneling, which was the rough side of the paneling, on the other. It adhered very, very well, and I'm pleased with the results that we got from that. The rough side of the paneling that's going to be facing the mountain and facing the inside of the layout, I'm not sure if I'm just going to paint a skyscape on the backside or actually get a backdrop with a skylight and some clouds and things. I'm not sure yet. I see what's out there, see what's available, and see what we can come up with that. Really wasn't sure how well this was going to do, so we may have overdone it, but I'd rather have a little much than not enough. So we put it to it. And again, like I said, letting it dry, it's done very, very well. And this is our divider now. Again, we contoured it close to what the mountain is. It's not exact. I wasn't worried about it being exact. And we're just using some weights to press up against it. The top wanted to bow out on me a little bit. I'm not sure what that was from, the nature of the board or whatever, but we was able to put us a one by up there and laid us a weight across the top of it, and it pushed it in just right. And as you can tell when we pan around here, it's pretty well straight. So we're pleased with the result there. So looking at rock outcroppings. I don't have any molds that are the rubber molds that you can buy. Not that I'm against them. I've never went and got any. But I saw on a DIY where you could go, and this is actually about 4 or 5 sheets or pieces of aluminum foil glued together with white glue and let it set. And then you just crinkle this stuff up ever so slightly and undo it and crinkle it again and undo it and crinkle it again and undo it till it gets the texture that you're looking for. And you make you some molds out of aluminum foil. Mix up your plaster of Paris mix and pour it into the mold. And the key with this is you can. I don't let it dry completely. But I do let it, you can tell with the plaster of Paris, it's shiny when it's still wet. When it gets dry, it starts to get a matte finish to it. And once it gets to that point, you can actually handle it pretty well and it not mess it up. So just peel away your aluminum foil, and this is what you wind up getting. And with that, bring them over here, lay them out on your mountain, close to like you want them, or however. Place them around, look at them, see what you think. Give yourself some options. I got a whole lot more down here than I'm ever going to use on this mountain, but it just gives you some options and some variations on different thicknesses and different cuts. And it's, everybody knows that all rocks aren't shaped the same. And of course, that's what we're shooting for here, is getting away from that uniformity. There was that biggest mold you just saw. I broke it up and I tried to make longer pieces with it instead of the smaller stuff. Again, just to give that type of variety. And all we're doing here is hot glue. Just gluing the backs of these and getting them close to where we want them. Some of these backs needed to be sanded down just to match the contour of the mountain just a little bit. Not very much. If it doesn't lay perfect, it's fine, because what we're going to do is go back and get some plaster and actually plaster them into place. The hot glue's, I'm not going to say a temporary hold, but it's to that point, it holds them long enough for you to get some plaster of Paris wrapped around it to hold it more permanent, and it just blends it right into the mountain. And the beauty of using hot glue is the way it reacts to the plaster. It doesn't stick great. Sticks well enough, but it doesn't stick so well that when you want to take it off, if something dries and you just really don't like the way it looks, you can peel it right off the mountain, and it doesn't mess up the mountain, and it doesn't mess up your rock mold either. Everything kind of, it does what you want it to. And then you can just peel the hot glue off in one good chunk and go at it again. And I'm putting these things up here, no rhyme, no reason. If it's a spot that I think a rock needs to be, stick a rock there. I don't know. Get us one up top there too. Like I said, you look around, you see a spot where you feel like a rock needs to be. There you go. And then go back and get you a plaster Paris mix out. Start molding into the side of the mountain and side of your rock mold. I do suggest not to use this particular technique because I've actually covered up a good bit of my details of my rock faces. The smaller trials and the smaller little scalpels are very good for placing the plaster Paris exactly where you want them without messing up your detail on your rock face. And when you do that, it causes extra work like I'm doing here of scuffing up those areas to get some of that texture back. Once that plaster Paris gets in those detail parts and it dries, it's over. It's tough to get those details, those exact details back. Now you can get in there and carve, of course, to do that. But take your time and don't mess up your detailed rock faces. It'll save you some time and effort. I did get these to turn out like I like it, like I wanted them to. But I could have saved myself some work just by not getting impatient with it and taking my time to start with. This is a little bit better view of what you can do. That's just a popsicle stick. And we're just going around the edge and pushing that plaster up into the crevice and leaving our rock face and leaving that detail in place. This little area right here was pretty neat. It's right where the train's going to go into the tunnel. I was putting a good bit, a liberal amount of the plaster on there. And when doing this right here, it actually peeled up, so I had to redo it. So I pushed it in pretty good and flattened it back out. And basically just took the edge of my popsicle stick to make those cut lines into that rock face right there. And just left it like that. And this is the basic look of what the rocks are going to look like on the mountain. So this is the first part of the painting process we're going to do to these rocks. This is just what I have in here is a deep gray, a black, and it's your basic water, isopropyl alcohol, and dish soap mixture. And I didn't measure anything. I put the deep gray as the main color and then added some black to it and got a darker tone than you want it to end up as. Because we're going to go back and do some dry brushing to lighten these rocks up. But this gets deep down into the deeper crevices and cracks. And then it'll allow for that to really showcase that depth once you do some of your dry brushing with your lighter colors. So just go around and coat all your rocks with this. Get in all the little nooks and crannies. And it'll help you paint. You see how runny this stuff is. And again, we're going to come back later on and do some dry brushing to bring out those details again and hit those high spots. This really does mask a good bit of that. But you want that contrast later on. Going to clean up some of the little extras that's hanging off the end of this right here. Break off some of the stuff I know is going to cause us some trouble. And it gets some wash as well. I mean, even just the black, even just having that darker wash on it, I mean, that just, you can really make this stuff look like rocks. And that's neat to me. And I am no artist by any stretch of the imagination. Do a little tugging and pulling. Free up some of this tape. Before I got too far along with it, I wanted to test a boxcar just to make sure I wasn't putting a whole lot of effort into painting and having to redo. So after we got this first coat on, I wanted to clean up the area and at least push a boxcar through just to see what or if we were going to hit anything in the area before we got too far into the process. And it bumps right there. So we just get our screwdriver and knock that edge off right there, and it chips away and looks just fine. I mean, it's easy. Easy fixes. It clears it just fine, but we'll go ahead and knock a little bit extra away just to make sure. And that's the widest car that I have from top to bottom. So if we get anything else that's a wide load, then we'll have to make some accommodations, or that'll be a restricted track for that particular car. I put some of our water, alcohol, and dish detergent mixture into my brown earth tone paint that I usually use on the layout. The rest of the layout is at full strength. I didn't really have enough in the container to paint the whole mountain, and really didn't want to go get any more paint. So cut this back, was curious how it was going to work, and it actually did just fine. I had a good coverage over it and had plenty enough paint once I cut it with some of that mixture to paint the whole mountain. And again, this is just a earth tone base coat. We will go back and do some extra scenery work to this, but to get rid of that stark white until we get to that point, or until we do that, because we are at that point now, just again to get rid of that stark white, we decided to throw down our brown base coat. And everything that was white, whether it was on parts of the scenery that I want to redo in the creek, every bit of it got some of this brown paint just to take that white away. Got a little bit overzealous with this one right here, and I painted across the top of it, and it drenched it and about covered it up. But this is where we're at right now with our mountain build. we'll be adding more scenery elements and painting our rocks to get them to exactly like we want them in the next video. Thanks for watching. Remember, like, share, subscribe, and until next time, happy modeling.